It's official catch-up. Another episode here with me, as always, is Chris. Where will we start? I think we have to start with Spurs.
I thought you were actually going to ask me how I'm doing, and that would have been a stupid question because I think after yesterday I would have been in an absolute smashing mood.
I can confirm, Chris, that the group chat was popping last night, and certainly with Chris's Spurs antics, we were both delighted to see Spurs get a win. I also got a win for Kelly and the Buffs all in the same weekend, which is a rare sight. So yeah, Spurs, Chris. Are the Spurs back?
Well, I did say that in the group chat. Obviously, I was not going to post anything at 1-0, but at 2-0, and the way we were playing and the way Villa were playing, I knew that game was dusted. I just knew, so everyone got it. I always say this, Ben, right? I don't really hold on to grudges, but I certainly hold on to receipts, and that's what I kept. Absolutely smashing. It was a really good game of football for us. We did concede late on, but make no bones about it, we're no out of the relegation fight. But no, I'm delighted. One thing I will say though, which people might not realise with Spurs in their culture have a way of playing. We're always been an entertaining side. We sacrificed it a wee bit with Conte and Mourinho simply because we wanted to win a trophy. But no, that is what I saw last night was what Spurs should be like. No terrorist ball under Thomas Frank. We'll maybe talk about him later with something else, but I think I was in a dark place with football when he was in charge of Spurs, so I'm not going to lie, it was horrible.
Definitely stop watching it, though. I actually have a point. My last two fantasy football teams have been named after Spurs managers, and they've both been sacked, so I'm not going to bother naming next year's fantasy football team after De Zerbi, I don't think, just in case. I had Ange Postecoglou last season, and Thomas the Frank Engine is this year's team name. So, not got a great record of naming my fantasy teams after Spurs managers. So, I think we'll avoid that just to not jinx Mr. De Zerbi. Hopefully, he gets Spurs playing and keeps us up, and then we'll be hopefully back to normal. Because obviously we've got a lot of injuries as well. That's the other thing, isn't it? There's so many players out, and that's the thing. The medical team at Spurs are working overtime or working terribly, depending on how you look at it. Sometimes some people have got a lot to say about their medical techniques, I think. So hopefully players get back fit for next season.
I heard a lot like, Aston Villa are keeping people for the Europa League tie. It's like, Spurs are keeping half our squad because we're injured, you know what I mean? So I'm not buying any of that nonsense about like, they were playing a weakened team. It was a decent team they put out. With Spurs as well, broadcasters in general, some of the things I was hearing yesterday about Emery being a genius and they're so good at set pieces. It's like, are you just trying to see Spurs concede here? Are they hoping that it happens? You're calling Emery a genius in the job he's done at Aston Villa when his team's getting beat 2-0. I'm like, this is why I cannot stand Sky Sports and the like, because the bias is unreal. And I don't think it's just against us. I think there's other teams as well, or maybe it's just favouritism towards your Arsenals, your Man Cities, your Man Uniteds, Liverpools, etc. Who knows? But I kind of roll my eyes sometimes when I hear these broadcasters.
Anyway, enough about Spurs. We've got plenty of football to be talking about. Obviously, the Lowland League is completed, but we did kind of allude to some discussions that we haven't had so far with regards to things like licensing and such like, which I think there's going to be some potential changes, I think, coming to the Lowland League and probably not next season, but probably the following season. I'd assume we'll take part. Also, when Lithgow Rose found out they couldn't play in the playoff, there was a statement made by the Lowland League which suggested that there would be, I need to look at the licensing requirements for teams within the Lowland League, because you can't really have a team, competing for the title and not then having the license to go up, because certainly as I understand it, I've heard, speculation that there'll be some sort of, I think they call it a termination clause or a break clause, to suggest that, if the Lowland League can't put forward teams to compete in the playoff, then that door potentially could be shut by the pyramid, if you like, the SPFL and the SFA. So the Lowland League have obviously got to have a look at this and try and understand, a bit about what they plan to do. And I think there's, some intentions. Reading the statement that suggested there'll be a plan to identify an early stage of those clubs with realistic promotion ambitions if a team like Linlithgow, were challenging, or the league is certainly keeping an eye on, the licensing requirements and making sure, and probably to a point, maybe supporting them to try and get the license over the line as well. I think that would be smart from the Lowland League personally, and I think there'll be, potentially then, a requirement to have bronze license in place by a certain time, much earlier than the original, playoff deadline as it would be, and potentially, I think it's been kind of rumoured and suggested that there may be a points deduction for clubs who don't who don't have the license and finish, in the top one or two. But I think that's probably to try and make sure that then they can maybe put in, a champion club, because I don't think the SPFL will accept a champion club or a nominated champion, as it would happen, for example, in the West. Or with the Lowland League when it came to the B teams, for example. So, a lot going on, Chris. What's your, initial thoughts on that kind of the comments made by the Lowland League?
I said at the time, obviously, it was a very strong statement, and I probably gave the game away a wee bit with some of the comments. But yeah, I mean, they have to take this stance because the SFA and SPFL want to shut us down. They want to shut the pyramid down. That's essentially what they're looking to do. Get out of jail free card clauses and all that sort of stuff, And there was a few things that bothered me about that statement. Certainly, it did seem like they were trying to shift the blame onto the Linlithgow Rose, and I thought to myself, yeah, it's fair. It is the club's responsibility, but surely we cover the league, and we know Linlithgow Rose don't have a bronze license. Are you telling me the league didn't know that? Because surely they would have, So there's certain things that don't kind of add up, but I actually think part of it was the league trying to maybe justify to the SFA or the SPFL maybe that they're kind of saying that, all right, well, we're doing everything we can by putting out these statements. Yeah, part of it, there was a lot of talk from other people, and I fully agree that why are we not pushing back more to the SFA, the SPFL as well? We should be saying, like, how is this, a meritocracy if you're wanting to close us down? Yeah, certainly I think the league should be pushing back a wee bit more with the SFA and SPFL on the pyramid. At the end of the day, I mean, it was them that introduced the pyramid, and the issue I think we have is obviously fans would be against it, I would assume, but that the SPFL clubs at the time will vote for that to be removed 100%. So we might not even get a say in if that does become the thing, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, I'm assuming a few years down the line if it does actually happen.
Yeah, so obviously the Lowland League are talking about putting in place a framework for clubs, which I think me and my day job I work with frameworks pretty much day in day out. They are a good thing in terms of making sure there is a real standard in place for teams, or would be for teams in the Lowland League certainly. That framework looks like it says, they'll identify that kind of early stage of those clubs that are, realistic in promotion ambitions. They'll monitor progress against the Scottish SFA licensing criteria during the season and provide clear guidance on expectations, milestones, and consequences where progress is not sufficient. So it's an interesting one. Chris, it kind of alludes to that, what we just mentioned earlier about, points deductions potentially, ramifications if you don't have your license. Now, the objection I have to that is I don't think you can do that in a, if you finish in the top 3, for example, or you finish in the first place and you don't have a license, therefore you get like a 9-point deduction, right? That to me isn't right. If you're going to have, a framework, it has to be consistent across the board. And while that's a team in 20th or 16th place or first place, it doesn't matter. It has to be the same. I don't think you can have that. So I think that feels, the idea of consequences just seems a bit strong and a bit kind of, punishment almost. And I think, Chris will probably come on to it fairly soon about, the costs involved in doing this sort of stuff. And certainly for me, a framework is a good thing. It can help. It can definitely. But we do already have a framework in the licensing. So what is the point of another one? I find that a bit strange as well, certainly. But, there has to be something done ultimately to get clubs licensed and making sure that we are keeping the door ajar. Because for me, we all know what the SPFL is all about. That they have been a closed shop. They will be a closed shop. That will not change until we can get through teams, into that membership and start to change the voting structure. But that'll take, potentially decades, the way it is with the current promotion relegation situation. Now, for me, I think there has to be some sort of intervention from outside bodies. Clubs in the SPFL, the SFA, they get money from the Scottish Government, I'm sure. There's money that comes in, to support clubs in various different ways. I think politicians have to generally get involved. I think I alluded to it a few weeks back with Clydebank. I think that's something that has to happen. I think there's some sort of, politicians are quick to jump in when it's about, fan behaviour and, unfairness on supporters and things like that when it comes to Rangers and Celtic and things like that. I think they have to get involved and somebody has to hold football in Scotland to account. It doesn't happen. The SFA don't do it. So that's probably their job and they don't do it. I know some people who work for the football regulator in England, and the principles of that is a really good thing. I think Scotland needs something similar. A football regulator that holds the SFA, holds the SPFL, and holds other leagues and different standards of football to account. That's something I think that needs to happen. How we do that, I'm not 100% sure yet, but certainly, Chris, how do we get a way forward, do you think?
It's a difficult one because, I did have some feedback from SPFL fans, if you will. The guys from Stranraer had a bit of a say, that our club has to put the money forward and do all these things. It's like, yeah, but it's a different scenario. It's a difference between upgrading something or maybe running a wee bit of maintenance to completely starting afresh and building the whole thing. You guys have got, Stranraer clubs like Stranraer have it in place because the standards have been there for years. For clubs just coming into the pyramid, you're talking what? Kelty came into the pyramid, what? 7 years ago or so, 7-8 years ago? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not what I would say organic. Like, you look at clubs like Spartans, Craig Graham built Spartans with the facilities that they have there, and that took over a decade, probably even more, you know what I mean? So now there's clubs doing a mad rush for ground repairs so they can get promoted one spot up in the league. It's ridiculous. I mean, and if you look at it, what I meant by it's not organic is because most clubs cannot afford these things, by themselves. They either need pitch funds, they either need help from the council, they need grants from the government or whatever it is. A lot of people brought up, Clydebank didn't need, 200k or whatever the Trinent were asking. It's like, to be fair, Clydebank got a 150k grant, possibly, from what I've heard, even more than that. So if all these semi-professional clubs or tier 5 clubs need 250k to get a bronze license, I think that's a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, it's an interesting one that, the Trinent thing where they've put the kind of the GoFundMe sort of initiative out there to try and get the funding in place, and they have put a target of 200k now. Having been involved in that process along the way, certainly from an entry level, and having looked at the bronze license, I don't think 200k is necessary personally. I think that feels a lot of money to be asking for. Trinent will have, I'm assuming, a budget and a requirement for what they need to spend the money on, and fair play. But I think, I know the costs of how to build a seated stand, for example, to have the right number of people. Probably a bigger seated stand, actually. The costs involved in that are nowhere near 200 grand. They have a limited lifespan, certainly. They're not permanent, but they're certainly enough to get you to where you want to be in terms of the licensing. I think the other thing that's probably difficult in terms of licensing is that doctor part of it. We all look at the ground and all look at the requirements to have, a certain size of pitch and, certain size changing rooms, seated stand, cover, disability access, and all that. And that's probably where it becomes the most costly part of it. But the one thing for me that I found difficult, certainly in my time at Coinning, was trying to find a doctor who's prepared to come and, spend a Saturday at a game at Coinning or any other club for that matter, and not, take a shift that can get the money. When you're talking to doctors and things like that, they were saying, well, I get this amount of money working for the NHS on a Saturday afternoon for, a 12-hour shift. So if I'm going to come to your football match, to do your football match that lasts maybe 3 hours, 4 hours max, including travel. I want this, and it's the numbers were mad, and firstly, it's trying to find people prepared to do it, and that for me is the concern I think around that doctor requirement, because we had someone in our club at one time who was a fully trained physio with what I would say would better qualifications than a GP to manage emergency sports injuries, for example, and that person wasn't qualified enough, but a GP was, because they're a doctor in their title effectively. So there's a lot of flaws to that whole process, and I think clubs will have to try and find a way to make that work. It's been forced upon us by the SPFL. We've talked about it previously in our previous episodes. They brought this in, they forced our hand, and clubs are now on the back foot trying to scramble around to try and get the money and get them things in place. So it's going to be difficult, but I genuinely just feel that intervention is required to make change for the betterment of football.
I think there was a lot of anger towards Linlithgow from obviously not their fans, but everyone else, because they were like, oh, they raised the admission price and spent it on the squad rather than doing the facilities and all that sort of stuff. I think a lot of that stuff was flying about. In terms of your 200k for Trent, I actually agree. I don't, maybe the sum is a wee bit off, but I don't think it matters much. I think you're probably still talking 100k, and to me, that's still a large amount of money. And even at entry level, I guess most recently, Largs obviously had to do a fundraiser to get their entry level license.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about standards, and you're talking about club doctors and the money that has to be raised, this is all outside of the club's hands. You need standards that are achievable for each and every one of the clubs, rather than it might happen. We've only got 20 fans, so we can't actually do that because we won't have enough, in the fundraiser or whatever. They're outpricing teams in terms of the progression, and I think that's what's happening for many of the clubs. And I think the argument, we mentioned People's Rovers last week, and obviously they were quite an interesting argument against East of Scotland, how they were always proud members of the East of Scotland. They started bringing all these changes in with standards and that, and then suddenly they're out of the league. We were here before the pop-up clubs or whatever. I think that was a dig at Bowness. But I think they're right. Maybe we have to even look at it further down the line, Ben, where there should be different standards for, say, Tier 5, Tier 6, and then different standards for Tier 7, 8, 9. Level the playing field in the sense that clubs... I know the argument will be said, we're committed to the pyramid, you have to do this, that, and the next thing, but if you're a Tier 9 club, and you've got no chance of progression, and you're always going to be a Tier 9 club. I mean, we're just being realistic on the field. That is the reality for most clubs in these certain tiers. Why do they need all these fancy facilities? And and it goes back to what I kind of said. Like, people are not paying to go and see, the facilities are great here. I'm going to come again. I've ground hop and see the facilities. We're going to watch football. You know what I mean? It's a basic. We're going to watch the sport. We're not like, wow, great, but that pie hut's amazing over there. It's the best pie hut in Tier 7. No one cares about that stuff. I said, well, maybe you do, Ben. I know you've had a few gripes with the cages and whatnot. But I think what we'll say, though, a lot of people are saying, we need to have standards. I'm not debating that we need to have standards, but I think sometimes the standards are a wee bit too high above where they need to be for everyone. We're classing levels or Tier 10 to like Tier 5 are the same, and it shouldn't be. Realistically, it will never be.
I mean, I suppose if you're a Tier 9 or Tier 10 side with no plans for progression, you don't need to, put anything major in place. I think there has to be some standards, but I don't think it has to be as, one and the same. If you want to play in the Scottish Cup and if you do want to progress, I think then, yeah, you've got to have some decent, ground and the right people in place and the right qualifications and such like for your people at the club. So I think that's important. If we are trying to be professional, I think that's one thing that has improved. This level of football that has become more professionalised. I don't know if there's a magic bullet to fix it though. That's the thing. I think there's it needs a lot of kind of discussion. I think there needs to be some sort of concessions made certainly across the board. I think the idea of maybe having a situation where, for example, in Lithgow, I think, if they haven't got what they had in place, the rumour was it was to do with, signing off accounts in terms of getting an auditor to do it and have that in place, and that's why they couldn't take part. I think there has to be some sort of concession there that you say, right, well, if you don't have this done by, 1, 2, 3 seasons, then you can get papped out of the league. I think that's the kind of thing that has to be put in place. You kind of mentioned that kind of organic approach. I think that would align more with that sort of thinking, and certainly would have a situation where clubs can actually work towards things slowly rather than having to like we have seen in the west of Scotland, for example, this season. Teams rushing to try and get floodlights up and get things in place in terms of the ground to make sure they could compete for the one of the 9 spots for promotion. So I think the Lowland League certainly have it's a new year of the Lowland League coming in the next season. I think it's a good time to make the changes, but the changes have got to be right for everyone and all the clubs. And I think we've seen it with discussions around the Junior Cup, the Scottish Communities Cup, for example, how the fixture is going to affect the Lowland League, and I think it seems like there's not really an interest to deal with that. And I think I just think we all have to be adults and get around the table and just have a proper discussion about things and get things in the right place. And for me, it's an exciting time for this level of football. I think I know you have maybe a different opinion about that, Chris, but certainly feel like the new year of the Lowland League could be really interesting, really fun, certainly for West teams and clubs in the East as well, to a point, and bringing Brecon into the fold and South teams coming in. It's all going to be fresh and new, so let's just try and find ways to make things work, whether that be licensing or cup competitions, everything that needs to be sorted out. Let's get them sorted out in the summer and try and aim to have a new, fresh, exciting league to look forward to.
I found a belter of a quote, right? It was wanting more is irrelevant without becoming more. And you know where I got that, Ben? My Instagram's been very strange lately. I'm getting all this inspirational stuff. I'm thinking to myself, why is this coming up? I must have liked a few things when Thomas Frank was in charge of Spurs that must have been in a dark place, like I mentioned before, that my Instagram. It's funny about that because I also realised yesterday that I had unfollowed about 10 of the Tottenham players because I must have been fed up with them at one point. So I followed them all back on Insta. But I thought that quote, I think it's, I don't know who it's attributed to, but I heard that and I thought that was a really good quote. I'll take the credit for it because I profound in that. But I never mentioned the thing about the points deduction. I think that's daft. I just don't agree with that. We're becoming like the SPFL if that's the case. But fundamentally, I've said it for the last 4 weeks and probably longer, probably the last year. The reason I don't like the split, and if we all add it together, right? So clubs, it's a complete lottery. Clubs need to get their bronze license. They have to invest in their facilities to get their bronze license. To then have a hope of maybe winning the league, to then winning the league, to then playing 2 other champion clubs, to then playing Club 42. I mean, how many more obstacles do you need in the way? If this was any other league in the world, in America, or people would be looking at it like, what is going on here? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know for sure if there's leagues in any other sports like that as complicated, but to me, it's beyond ridiculous that there are the hurdles and obstacles that we talk about that are put in place, and we're, in my opinion, with a split, I know you see it differently, and maybe we've buried ourselves. We've made it even more difficult, in my opinion, and that always has been my opinion. And I know certain people agree, and maybe certain people don't. But
it's probably more difficult, for the Lowland League teams that are currently there. Everyone else is probably getting a leg up in terms of where they're getting to. The playoff, I think we were concerned that it was going to be a straight shootout between Lowland League West and Lowland League East teams, and then a match against the Highlands. We now know it's going to be like a kind of round robin approach, which is no different to what we've got just now. Certainly, are just going to be a third team effectively involved. Instead of it being a South team, it's going to be an East team and a West team, and then the Highland League team. So I think yeah, for me, it's an exciting time. It's new grounds to go to if you're a fan. Obviously, I'm looking at it from a different lens next season, certainly as a probably more of a fan than having been involved in a club. It's certainly something I was really looking forward to as a club. In a club position, rather, and really gutted, to be honest, that I'm not going to be involved in that. And I think watching. We'll probably touch on Cohen later, but having seen the progress that's been made in the last few weeks there, probably going to get promoted in the next week or two, and it's sad not to be a part of it because I was really looking forward to going to these grounds and the Lowland League and meeting up with some of the guys in the group chat and stuff like that, and getting to see friends at Clydebank and all that again was going to be something that was going to be really exciting, really enjoyable, but feels a bit bittersweet, I would say, at the moment for me, certainly. But yeah, I think we just need to look forward and try and find a way to make it work on all fronts, and that includes as I say, the cups, the leagues, the licensing, the fixtures, everything that comes with this new setup. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out in the summer.
Not to stay on this topic any longer, Ben, but I actually think the round robin's actually harder than the home and away fixture, because if you're the first team playing and you lose the first game, I think that's you effectively out, rather than having potentially two shots. Usually what happens anyway. That's not the same as home and away for me, or two legs, I should say.
The only thing, though, Chris, I'd say about that is that it should be much more evenly balanced in terms of, I think in the past it's always been like, a South team, a West team, and an East team, and that sort of round robin, setup, and the South team predominantly being the weaker side tends to, lose that match, and it becomes the same, straight shootout between the West and East teams. And I see where you're coming from in terms of I think it's harder, but for me it will be a lot more balanced in terms of that whole division, or the setup for the round robin. You could potentially have a Clydebank, a Brecon, and a Brora. You can't pick who's going to win that. That'll be very evenly matched, and every match will count. Whereas in the past it's been a South team, an East team, and a West team, and you look at the South team as the kind of the easier fixture, and then ultimately it's a straight shootout between the West and East teams. So no, I think I see where you're coming from, but again, I think it's still something that everyone can get behind and be excited about, and certainly look forward to seeing how it all plays out. Because there's probably a lot of stuff to talk about in terms of constitutions and voting rights and fixture congestion, all that other stuff that we've talked about before. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, and we'll obviously still be around for the next few weeks to see what changes, and we'll talk about them as they unfold. Okay, moving on, Chris. Then we're probably just jumping on to some of the different divisions we covered. The East of Scotland in pretty much detail last week, but we'll bring people up to speed on what's happened there. Starting off in the East of Scotland Premier League, Beath Hawthorns, Chris, win the Premier Division. I believe you were at the Hawes game on Saturday.
Yeah, I rolled back the years with my stepdad. He hadn't been at the football for a long time. I don't know if I've maybe mentioned it on the pod before, I'm not sure, but my younger brother is actually special needs. So obviously he's a bit older now. It's kind of been a bit of a tough time for my mum and my stepdad, obviously having to sort of dealing with him, if you will. They do get respite here and there, but they don't often go out otherwise in terms of that. They don't always get away, sort of thing. So it was just good to get him out of the house, obviously, for the football. As I say, he was a wee bit, I guess, was he in his element? He was always big for giving the Lino some stick. I think he got a wee bit in the first half. It was pretty funny, but to be fair, the game was quite poor. I'm not going to lie. It was a nervy sort of hoofball at a lot of times sort of game. I was really disappointed with Camelin. I did hear Tam Scobie's interview, which I thought was like the harshest interview I've seen, because Tam's getting asked all these questions, and you hear the Hawes lifting the trophy in the background. It's like, who timed that? You know what I mean? You could barely hear Tam what he was saying with all the celebrations going on. I thought that was a bit poor, but
I remember when we played Darvel, and Darvel won the league that night down at Recreation Park. They had a very similar experience. Tried a post-match interview, and the Darvel fans are just singing and shouting in the background. It was I can definitely feel the pain of the media guys' job there.
Tam Scobie had said that they obviously lost, surprisingly, to Socky midweek, which would have given them a great chance to go into the Hawes. But I think he said basically the form kind of continued. But yeah, I was trying to say to my stepdad, like, this is not how these two teams normally play, but the occasion maybe got to a few of the boys. As I say, it was a scrappy game. It was decided by a penalty. I was on the other side because we switched sides to where the Hawes were shooting. Didn't really see it too closely. My initial thought was soft. But yeah, on that, obviously, Camelin go down to 10 men. Hawes get the penalty, they put it away. But yeah, overall, a kind of disappointing game, really. But Hawes got the victory. Obviously, they're not going to care too much. They got the win. Saw a few familiar faces. John Mitchell was there, obviously, supporting Jake, his son. Michael Gemmell, who's known it well at the Hawes, obviously, the Bonus United assistant manager. I was a wee bit disappointed at half-time. So it was a way to get my, I saw a can of juice or whatever, but they ran out. The snack bar at the Hawes is not the biggest, but I'm surprised they didn't sort of anticipate a bigger crowd, if you will. So I had to run out the ground at half-time to go down to the shop to get us a couple of bottles of juice or whatever. Thinking about how I started, appreciating non-league football when Hillabeef and Kelty and that were back in the Fife leagues and the Super Leagues and the juniors, to how it potentially could end. I think that's kind of a wee bit special, actually. It's kind of went full circle, in my opinion. So it was quite nice. Hopefully, if the prices don't go up too much, obviously, hopefully me and my stepdad will get to the Hawes or whoever next season as well. So with the league, I've already tried to explain that he's not kept up with things, obviously, with the split and everything. I've tried to keep him, informed if you're not. So I'll need to maybe remind them, obviously, after the summer or whatever, what's happening.
What do you mean the Hawes aren't rolling out the red carpet to Chris from the official Catchup podcast? What a disgrace. They haven't got the red carpet out and giving you the VIP treatment.
I've never asked for special favours from any club. I think there's probably been only two really in the loan that have actually kind of went out their way, and that was East Stirlingshire and Gala, surprisingly, Gala. But no, I've never asked for any favours, to be honest, for clubs. But then again, it's a bit of a weird one with the Hawes, because obviously I have the connection with Kelty as well, which I'm pretty sure they're aware of, and it's a big rivalry there. So, I mean, I had the same when I was up at Kelty. He's like, "Oh, Chris, did you used to go to the Hawes, did you?" I'm like, "Yep." there's a wee bit of that too, obviously, with it, because it is, let's just say that County Beath Hillabeef won't be the same as Kelty Hillabeef next season, you know what I mean?
Feeling Chris in the East of Scotland Premier Division, the one game to talk about was that Musselburgh got a 3-0 win against Dreamfield Swifts, taking them up to second in the table. That result for Camelin against Hillabeef and the one during the week at Socky has put them really, on the back foot, and really need to go and get a result on Saturday, and obviously hope that Musselburgh and Dunipace drop points effectively. With only 3 teams going up to the division, I think there's definitely going to be a need for Camelin to put a score up against St Andrews, and they've got Dunipace playing Dundonald Bluebell, and Musselburgh are playing Hillabeef. Musselburgh are probably going to hope that Hillabeef are in party mode. They've got the league title wrapped up. They'll be probably. Did they get the trophy on Saturday, Chris, or was it still to be?
They did. They did get the trophy. We were wondering that. We were wondering that ourselves, because we were kind of walking out and we saw Jake going over to hug his dad when we were kind of walking out, and then the announcement came and they got their trophy in that. Because I don't think too many fans were sure. They kind of left it late on the announcement, so half the crowd was away anyway. So, but they got the league trophy. So no helicopter, Saturday or taxi Sunday or whatever,
Scored a Saturday, as it was in the lower league a few weeks ago. I guess then, obviously Musselburgh, they all have to win. Musselburgh and Dunipace and Camelin have all got to get results on Saturday before we see what's happening in terms of who will take positions in the lower league East next season. But certainly, it will be an interesting one. Another thing you wanted to talk about, Chris, Dunbar. There's now got a new club record appearance holder in Grant Thompson, the captain. 534 appearances made. Overtakes Dougie Elms to become the club's all-time appearance leader. 534 games, Chris. Some achievement.
It's a fantastic achievement for Grant Thompson. We obviously had to highlight it because, similar to, I know it's only half of the games of Tucker at Talbot as a manager, but it's still a massive achievement for any player to reach these levels. We saw it a wee bit earlier in the season with Alan Reid at Albion Rovers, but I don't know, dying breed, Ben, for most of these guys, I guess, that will make 500 appearances for the one club.
Yeah, I think so. I think just in this day and age of this level of football and money and things like that, people are prepared to jump around clubs. If you have one good season, you're only at one move away to get a nice paycheck potentially at another club. So I think let's not be kidded on. The football at this level, money plays a big factor, and the kind of loyalty thing is going to be rare. I think you're right. I think you'll find that less and less people do. You'll still get the odd player who just enjoys playing at the local team down the road to their house, whatever. But I think by and large you'll see players moving about a bit more. Moving on to the first division, Chris, we talked about last week. Armadale champions, still looking to see what happens with 2 games to go in that division. West Calder 2 points ahead. Still a few games to play in the second division, but West Calder still sitting 2 points ahead of Coldstream. Hoyk, Royal Albert sitting on 58 points. Edinburgh are on two games left and 51 points. Stonyburn 27 games played and 50 points. Hoyk confirmed promoted and pretty much won the title, Chris.
Yeah, they're not far off. Like they're 7 points clear of the. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Stonyburn still with an outside chance, but yeah, Hoyk at least have got promotion. I said the same about West Calder last episode where I thought they would overturn in the second. They have obviously, and Hoyk, yeah, they've pretty much got at least one hand on the title there, I would say. And we obviously know about Armadale Thistle winning the East First Division, and obviously Paws now champions of the East Premier. So we covered most of the East of Scotland last week. Not too much to say until maybe either next week or maybe until the end of the season anyway, Ben.
One thing you want to mention, Chris, was the new charity foundation that's been set up by the family of Charlie Watson, who sadly passed away to cancer.
Yeah, it was the Charlie Boys Cancer Fundraiser launch on Saturday, which would have been like the 21st birthday of Charlie Watson. It's actually would have been his birthday today, actually, but it was like his birthday weekend, if you will. Yeah, raised over £3,000. Obviously, the thing for us, Ben, is that we've been sort of supporting them in a sense for the CW04 Young Player of the Month that we've been doing all season. Got a message from, I don't think she'll mind me saying, but I got a message from Charlie's mum either last night or this morning. Certainly I saw it this morning, and he's obviously deeply missed his family. Obviously a horrible thing to be taken at such a young age. But yeah, I've talked to his mum on a few occasions, and obviously we were honoured and proud of being able to just raise awareness for the thing that we do in terms of the Young Player of the Month. And obviously I think most people know the situation where I could potentially be taking a break, but one thing Amanda did mention is that she hopes that it carries on for next season. So I might have to put that out if that's the only thing I put out. But just if we're always kind of support the charities. Obviously, you go back to the early days of the Catchup, we were aligned with sort of Back On Side, and we've kind of raised awareness for. I mean, I done one for Scott Lucas recently with his dad. Obviously, he's run. Anytime I see something like that, I always try my best to at least sort of raise awareness, if I will. And but the difference with Charlie obviously was the fact that he was involved at this level, and it was a deep tragedy for Scottish football. And yeah, I'm just glad that we can remember him in a positive way. There are other things on the horizon, hopefully that we can set up.
Moving on then, Chris, to the West Scotland. We will start with the West Scotland Football League Cup final. Took place at Broadwood on Sunday between Troon and Auchinleck Talbot. Troon were the winners, 1-0 win with a 93rd minute winner from Jack Allen. Certainly, congratulations to Troon. Well deserved for me in terms of Troon. I love what they're doing over there at Portland Park and have a lot of time. I mean, like I've probably said for a few clubs now, but for the guys like Richard and Jimmy, etc. over at Troon, who are good people and have built the club the right way, and certainly have got themselves into a great position now in terms of licensing and all sorts of stuff. So well deserved victory for Troon. Auchinleck Talbot went down to 10 men. Kyle McAvoy gets sent off. inside 35 minutes, and I think it was kind of backs the volley bit for Auchinleck, but couldn't quite find a goal, and it was right at the death for Troon, Chris.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad that it was Kyle because I've got a lot of time for Kyle myself. Won't say too much, but he reached out when my dad died last year and gave a sort of his own sort of personal story, and I really appreciated that. I always appreciate that. So I always sort of look out for Kyle. So I was a wee bit disappointed to see he got sent off there, but hello, that's football. I rate Talbot. Obviously, we spoke about Troon. We talked up Troon, I think, last episode, or certainly the last few episodes. They are now a top West of Scotland side.
For sure.
And I would suggest they probably could potentially be challenging the Low League West next season, without a doubt.
What they did last season, they'll add better players. They'll add, increase the squad depth. They've got a license now in place. They don't have to, maybe worry too much about spending money on the stuff I've talked about before in earlier episodes. In terms of ground and things like that, they can really focus on the playing side and maybe just add those little key pieces that they probably need to their squad. But they're right up there. They can still win the league. I think it's Talbot's to lose now, certainly with the way the league's set up in terms of the games in hand. But Troon have the points on the board. That's the one thing that they do have. Talbot have to go and get results, Tuesday, Thursday this week and things like that. So certainly it will be a good one to watch the end because Cumnock are right amongst it as well, certainly. And moving on then, Chris, to the West of Scotland Premier Division, we'll start with the fixtures and then we'll have a bit more of an in-depth discussion about what happened in the West Prem this weekend, and then we'll cover off the other divisions like we said we would on last week's episode. But starting the Premier Division, Athley 5, Pollok 1, Glenafton 0, Cumnock 3, Largs 1, Renfrew 0, Rutherglen 0, Kilwinning Rangers 1, Shottsborough Accord 3, Johnstonborough 1, St Cadoc's 0, Hurlford 2. Couple of important results there, I think, in terms of the league title. Chris, Cumnock going to Glenafton and getting a 3-0 victory. Really important for Cumnock to try and kind of keep pace at the top of the table and get those points on the board.
Well, we all know how good Cumnock are, but I think looking back, obviously the loss to Talbot a few weeks ago was kind of devastating, and they could have folded. In fairness, we always use that word folded, but it's true. It's similar to Musselburgh, obviously, all the drama that went on there, and they've kind of lifted up. And I think after that defeat to Talbot, Cumnock have done the same. So fair play, but it's tense, and you do wonder, will, in terms of the title chase anyway, Ben, whether the cup defeat will have any sort of mentality thing for Talbot. It's all about confidence, really, isn't it? Really, sometimes if you get knocked back and whatever else, it's an interesting one. But no, fair play to Cumnock after losing such an important match. They've certainly shown that it's not over, and it's similar with Troon, I would suggest.
Yeah, well, I think, like we said earlier on, Troon have got the points on the board, and that's something that will be really important for them. Likewise, they've got the game in hand, obviously, on Troon at least. Troon got 2 games to go. I think they play Saturday, so they'll have the momentum in terms of the fixtures. I think, Auchinleck have been very vocal, whether it be the support or the players or the management about the fixture congestion. They're very much the kind of poor me attitude to it, and it's always kind of feels a wee bit like that when it comes to Auchinleck and or teams who have this fixture congestion, because it's it happens every year, and it's something that why haven't we changed it? We're members, we can vote and change things in terms of the constitution and the rules and such like. So there's possibilities there, but I don't have much sympathy for Auchinleck in terms of their situation. From Cumnock's perspective, similarly, they've got to get the just keep winning now. All Cumnock can really do is just keep winning. They don't have much else to do other than that.
Speaking about obviously the Talbot and the fixture congestions, apparently you've got a solution to the Communities Cup, Ben. I'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I'm not a big fan of the Communities Cup. I think I made that pretty clear in the podcasts. But I think we know that the Lowland League certainly are not going to be, massively favourable of the Communities Cup entries for those clubs who are interested in it. Now, as it stands, I believe the South Challenge Cup is mandatory for the Lowland League clubs. It's optional for West Scotland Football League clubs, as voted at the AGM last year. I think it's too late for clubs to sort out changing the constitution and things like that for this season, certainly. So what they can do is, I've come up with a plan for teams. You send your 20s to the South Challenge Cup. You get the games scheduled for the Communities Cup on the same day as the South Challenge Cup. You send your first team to the Communities Cup, and you send your 20 squad to the South Challenge Cup. Now, if they get through the first couple of rounds and you get papped out the Communities Cup, you can revert back and vice versa. But it would be no different, really, to University of Stirling playing in a Bucks League game down south and playing a Lowland League game at the same time. So it's entirely feasible, and the Communities Cup people can have that one for free, as far as I'm concerned, because I do want to find solutions for everyone. But I'm not a massive fan of the competition. In fact, I'm not a fan of any of the cup competitions across this level of football. I don't think there's any cup apart from the Scottish Cup, obviously, that's really of any interest, to be honest. So
we never mentioned the big issue as well that no one's talking about apart from us. I mean, we need to get this sorted because it's a serious issue within Scottish football. What is with the trophy lids?
Trophy lids are, they obviously buy them from the same shop, and nobody bothers to tell the captain who goes to pick up the trophy, by the way, that lid comes off. If you chuck it up in the air, it's going to come back and hit you in the head, or someone else, or take someone's eye out. I think one of the years, someone did get like a cut finger off like the trophy lid, or one of the trophies. I remember that happening, being at a cup final, and somebody getting a cut finger. But yeah, there's a solution for the problem that is the cup competitions, and certainly because I don't think it will change this season. Maybe next season when there's more teams involved, they can maybe tip the balance of power a little bit within the Lowland League setup, because I don't think they'll be able to do that in time for next season. So yeah, that was my brainwave that I had late last night. I think I text you, Chris, to tell you about my grand plans. Or
we've talked about it actually. We kind of talked it in more depth last week, but I actually listened to the podcast. Plug for our other non-league podcasts there, but Paul and Alex McDowell and I think Kendo, the St. Roch's manager, was on. It was actually a good pod. I actually listened to it. I thought it was really good. And I don't know, Alex, maybe you've had dealings with him, certainly, but I actually think he made a lot of good points around the cup money. I think, what he's done. I don't know, you're kind of looking at me weird there, Ben. I don't know the ins and outs. I don't know the guy, obviously, but from a lot of what he said, I actually kind of agreed with him in a sense. But yeah, we all knew. I mean, I said it last week. I didn't expect the relationship to change for the Lowland League to the Junior Cup because we knew what happened with Trinent. We knew what happened with Bowness United. Camelin, I think they were the same with the East. I can't quite remember, but no, I think they pulled out the quarter final if I remember correctly. So I would have been the same situation. But no, in fairness to Alex, as I say, I don't know him. I don't know the ins and outs. I personally don't have anything against the juniors. I might, some people might not think that, but I mean, like I've literally said it earlier in the podcast, my experience of non-league football was first at the juniors with pause in that, So, but I know, I truly, no bullshit. I actually agreed with what Alex said on a lot of these things, and one thing he did highlight, and I think it, not just with the Communities Cup and the Lowland and everyone else, I think the key component of what he said was communication. There needs to be more talk between, and we've certainly advocated for that for different things, even between the SFA, the SPFL, the Games Board, I guess, or what we're calling it, the Tier 5 Games Board. Or the first, I think that's the first time we've mentioned that in a year, but yeah, apparently that's a thing you remember, Ben. So, we need more talk. I don't know if there's still any pyramid working groups going about.
I just want to caveat here, by the way, before anyone may move on. This will look like it's been set up by me to talk about this. Chris has just come up with that completely, off the cuff. It's not even in our notes that Chris writes for the episodes. Just to follow up on that, I did also watch that episode that you're referring to on the West of Scotland build-up show that Paul Adamson runs, and it's good to see that back. Paul's a friend of mine, and certainly glad to see it back.
I can only take what he said at face value. And what a lot of what he had to say, I liked, and that's what I'm saying. I'm I'm not buying into the Community Cup or the Junior Cup or whatever. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, just from what he said, I liked a lot of what he said, and I think he's got a point and a few points.
So given Chris has brought this up, I have to a few things that kind of wanted to address on that thing. Like Chris, you mentioned it a couple of times now. You know, dealings that I've had with Alex, I haven't. I have had no dealings with the guy other than listening to his pitch to become chairman of the West Scotland Football League a couple of seasons ago at the AGM. I never met him as part of co-winning Rangers board. That was never something that myself or the chairman did. It was other people at the club, certainly more probably on the outside, if you like, rather than the working day management committee. So, you know, I have had no dealings with him. I think he made a point about, you know, playing, you know, chat manager with, you know, the Gartgale, and he's been back to Gartgale, and he, you know, made a point about co-winning not being a club that felt like his. I could have probably told him that before he even, you know, had any sort of meeting with anyone at co-winning Rangers. As for the Junior Cup, I think, you know, I think there is, you know, some positives about it. I can get on board with some of the things. I just don't agree with some of the ways it's set up. Certainly, I think, you know, I know of a team who went up north last year, for example, to somewhere in the Highlands, and that team, the home team, lost money on that game because they had to pay a guarantee to the away team because it wasn't that big a crowd. Now, that for me doesn't sit right. You can sing and dance about, you know, prize money and the money that comes into the competition. Great, brilliant if we can get a cup run and get to the last 32 and get paid out. That's you know, brilliant for the clubs. If you can get to the final, you get, you know, there's 20 odd grand, and you can potentially make, like somebody he mentioned, one of the teams made maybe about 50 grand or something like that, and our team made about 20. That's brilliant. You know, that is actually great for this level of football for sure. But the two things would have to change for me around the Communities Cup is all leagues have to be on board, which they can't get that to happen now. And I think there has to be some sort of regionalisation in the first 2, maybe 3 rounds, or some sort of staggered, seeded approach like the way they do in the Scottish Cup. I think it has to mirror the Scottish Cup in a lot of ways in terms of how that's set up. And, you know, I think as well, maybe cream a little bit off the top of the top prize money and give it back out to clubs. Now, I think they suggested that the prize money, a bit of that comes from like discipline, for example, you know, fines for clubs and such like. I don't know how I feel about that. That feels like a strange way to make money for me, you know, in terms of, you know, fining your own clubs to then pay it back out to, you know, competition, what the winner of the competition and such like. I'm not so sure. You know, I think we have to sort out a non-league cup. I think that's something we have to find a way to do, and I just don't know how we do it, because I just think there's too many egos, there's too many people want a slice of the pie and want it run a certain way, and I don't think I can be the person to do it. You know, I'm not saying I'm, you know, here to try and mend the bridges and, you know, try and get all the clubs involved. I think that needs to be led by the SFA. My understanding is the SFA are not that bored about doing that. I think they're not really. They have the Scottish Cup and they just see that as their competition, which is fine. But there's definitely a place for a non-league national competition, as far as I'm concerned, and we just need to find a way to do it in the right way, and hopefully we can get there maybe 27, 28. I know there's some ideas, and, you know, I think if we can just get around the table and just have, you know, adult conversations and try and go back to that point about, you know, concessions, finding the balance and finding, you know, what works for some people and what works for others, and then just try to find the best version of what we can in terms of that Communities Cup, because it's potential, but there's obviously a lot of kind of water under the bridge as well in terms of, you know, people's opinions of the SGIFA, for example, the people maybe who are involved in that as well. You know, I think a lot of these clubs have certainly got, you know, strong opinions about that too. So that's where it becomes hard to get them involved in the competitions. And yeah, for me, I just don't know, you know, how we resolve it. And I think maybe perhaps the pyramid, you know, working group, if it does meet up fairly soon, which I think it is, will hopefully have that on the agenda, which I think they are, and then they'll find a way to make it work for everyone, and then we can all be involved, and it'll be, you know, have the right things in place, whether that be, you know, extended TV coverage or, live stream coverage. I know I've got a bit of skin in the game on that, but it's possible that we could maybe have something like that where that makes a spectacle of the competition as well. So yeah, I don't know how it plays out, but it's certainly something that I'm not giving loads of thought to beyond my mad theory about playing 20s and first team players in 2 different matches in the same day. But apart from that, yeah, it's an interesting one, Chris. But we'll move on. We now know that Troon, Cumnock, Auchinleck, Largs, Johnston Borough and Pollock have confirmed their status in the Lowland League West for next season. Pollock, even though they lost on Saturday to Atherley, Glenafton getting beat made sure that basically Pollock can guarantee their position. Beath play on Tuesday night against Largs. If Beath lose to Largs on Tuesday, co-winning will be guaranteed promotion to the Lowland League West, which will be great. I'm also delighted for the team there. I think it needs Beath to have a 20-goal swing to make that not happen. So I'm delighted for the players at co-winning. Certainly that I've got a lot of time for the boys that were in that squad. I'm just gutted I'm not going to be a part of it. That's the thing for me. It really came away. I went to the Raleigh game on Saturday. I've been going to games with Colin Evans, the chairman, and his family predominantly, and a couple of other guys, former committee members, and I can enjoy the fact of going as long as a fan, first and foremost. But I think for me, there's just a kind of overriding sadness, I think, really is probably the word, that we're not going to be a bit a part of that and not be able to, really be involved in telling that story and talking that up and enjoying the moments and with that the squad of players and selling the management team that were there when I was there. I think let's not kid ourselves on. Christian's done a brilliant job coming into that team, and he's turned things at a different level, which is great to see for co-winning. But I just would love to have seen Kev complete that journey. I think he had earned enough to do that, and ultimately it's not happening. So yeah, I'll watch it from the sidelines, and I'd say I came away from Rutherglen on Saturday, knowing that we've been almost promoted, if you like, and just really gutted not to be involved, which is that's what it is.
You know what is funny, Ben? You actually mentioned that because I actually felt the same on no joke. I felt the same on Saturday when I went and saw the Haws. It was the first time. Well, maybe not the first time, but certainly around this time of the season when there's awards. Towards the end of the season, if it's been a successful season and there's night outs and stuff like that, I do feel like I miss that feeling of being involved, especially in the group chats when they're all their bloody parties and everything like that. EK won the league, obviously we should give them a wee shout out. I'm not mentioning them, but East Kilbride obviously won the league too. But no, I did. I was slightly, snarky or whatever on Saturday because I was feeling the exact same way, and I've not felt that in so long because what I'd done at Spartans and Kelty was predominantly media, and I didn't want to do that side of it. But being not involved at a club it is difficult sometimes when you see everyone being happy and successful and stuff like that, and you do get like your fear of missing out, if you will. But I know I totally understand it, Ben. I totally understand it.
It's probably not fear of missing out, but it's more we started that journey a couple of years back. At the time, we had 9 signed players, of which 4 of them were youth players. 7 are currently in the first team just now as it stands, and I've came through that journey with myself and the chairman, and I just think for me it's that bit media was part of my job as well, like you mentioned, and just not being able to tell that story properly and really make a big deal about the fact that we have gained promotion effectively, and it's gutting, but I watched the last couple of games and from the sidelines and enjoy it as a fan, and then next season we'll look at what we're going to do next season. I've obviously got some grand plans with my new media company that I've set up, so maybe take a step back completely from watching co-winning next year and just go on and focus on projects and things like that I've got on my mind. But anyway, enough about me and what's happening in my head. We'll move on to the West Scotland First Division. Irvine Meadow are crowned champions with 67 points. It absolutely sickens me to say congratulations to Irvine Meadow. Let's not be kidded on. Jamie McKim's done a brilliant job at Meadow. he's brought in a sort of good quality squad in terms of built on what was already there really, and picked up some good players and really improved things. Bringing in the guys like Jojo Gillespie and Kieran Brophy, talented players at this level, and make a big difference. So yeah, well done to Irvine Meadow. They'll take their place in the Premier Division next season, alongside St Rocks, who have confirmed promotion as well, along with Vela Clyde, which I'm delighted for Vela Clyde. I really am. I mean, I've got a lot of time for John Hughes up at Vela Clyde. Been going about things the right way, building things quite, and going back to your point about organically, taking Vela Clyde into the Premier Division's a big deal, and I think they'll be a good addition to that Premier Division. They've got some great players and as well in that team, and again for St Rocks, very similar. They've done a lot of good things. Kendall's built a squad that's very very capable, and I'm sure it looks like they're tying up a few of those boys for next season who will be able to be right up there. I think Irvine Meadow, St Rocks, and probably Vela Clyde will be threats amongst that Premier Division, because you'll have your athletes, your Hurlfords already in there, and then it'll be interesting to see who comes up as well, because it's looking likely, Kirky Rob Roy, Winton Rovers, Kilburnley, Darvel, Muirkirk, Cumbernauld, Benburb to a point, are only a point behind the spots, so a lot to play for in the last kind of 3 games in the West First Division, Chris.
Yeah, I mentioned how strong the East First Division was last week. The West of Scotland First Division is equally as strong. I've actually been keeping up with the likes of St Rocks, and I thought you were going to call me out actually, because I did retweet the medal winning the league thing on the Catchup, so I thought you were going to call me out there.
It's all friendly. It's all friendly rivalry. I know Big Marky up at Irvine Meadow as well, and I was having a laugh and a joke with him in the group chat on Saturday night, saying, I'm absolutely congratulations, but I'm absolutely delighted. I'm not going to be going seeing you next season, because Irvine Cohen are going to go up, and Meadow are coming up into the Prem. So no, it's all just loving jokes for this level of football. And they give me stick, I give it back. That's just how it is. It's been like that since I started my job at co-winning. So yeah, that's just a little bit of fun, but no harm done at all. In the second division, Chris, Bells Hill have been crowned champions. They finished. Well, they've got 2 games left, but they're well out of sight of Threave. Bells Hill, again, another team that have got some really good players. They've picked up Callum Graham. Callum Graham's a Premier League striker. There's no doubt about it. He's had probably a difficult few seasons, I would have said. Been around Clydebank, Pollock, Irvine Meadow as well at one point, and he just struggled, I think. And he's obviously local to Bells Hill, and he's went back into his hometown club, and basically got them promoted. So yeah, well deserved for Bells Hill. They'll be another good addition to the First Division next season. And Threave, Chris, Threave are an interesting one. Obviously they moved from the south of Scotland into the West a few seasons ago, and now I think they're on their 3rd promotion in 3 seasons. They've rattled through the leagues, in jig time. They joined the 4th Division, a few seasons back, and again finished 2nd effectively in the 2nd Division. So not only have they just got promotion because of the restructure, they've done it convincingly well.
I think they needed to, because certainly that area, Threave, obviously a former South of Scotland side, you would think how decent their side is. You would think the likes of maybe Gretna, Dalbeattie, Newton Stewart, they would probably be looking at some of them Threave players. You know what I mean? So sure. I think they needed that progression to sort of keep track, if you will, because certainly, I don't know in terms of finances. I wouldn't imagine there was too much difference in terms of wages between the likes of, say, Newton Stewart and Threave, but certainly you would think Gretna could probably maybe dish out a bit more, perhaps Dalbeattie, I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, certainly in terms of the progression anyway, you want a successful team in Threave to keep players interested, because if you're stuck in, with all respect, the 2nd Division or the 3rd Division, or and you don't see much progress, and then someone like a Lowland League team or a successful South of Scotland team like Dalbeattie, who can win trophy, in fairness, Newton Stewart won a trophy as well. So it was what was needed. And obviously, just on the note of Freve, obviously, it was great for them on the weekend, obviously, with Charlie Watson, remembering him as well, obviously, a former player at Freve. So I just felt like they needed that. They definitely needed that boost. Can't really say too much, but, grapevine talk. I do believe they are going to be losing a few players anyway, but certainly I don't believe it'll be like their full squad or not with that success.
Elsewhere in the second division, then Blantyre, Victoria, Bonnet and Thistle, Kilsyth Rangers, Les Mahago have all confirmed promotion to the first division for next season. Elsewhere, it's currently sitting Maryhill and Cambuslang on 42 points and Thorn on 35. Thorn have a number of games in hand, as do Maryhill. So I think, looking at it, the teams below are Greenock, Larkhall, Maybole, sitting in 35. They're probably not out of mathematically, but it's a lot of work, I think, given the games in hand for the other sides.
Yeah, I mean, if we're looking down the tiers, we'll obviously talk about the third and the fourth division, but there seems to be like it's tight, I would say, tight for the promotion spots, and I actually think it's harder to call. I think further down the divisions, unless there's one sort of clear favourite. I think when you look at the first division and the second division, you did have clear favourites. You did have you knew Medal were going to do well. You knew St Roch's were going to do well. You knew So, but I don't know. I look at some of them teams and think they're probably they are on the same level, but certainly I don't know how to call it, Ben, with some of them, because there's so many promotion spots up for grabs. It's tough. It really is tough.
I think the thing about it is it's all about now the games in hand and stuff like that. The points on the board versus the games in hand are going to be potentially crucial. You look at it, Larkhall played 29, they've only got one game left. A week on Saturday. Maybole similarly got 2 games left. So they have to pretty much win all their games to try and get into that spot and hope that Thorn really just drop points, because Thorn, another team that went on that kind of back promotion almost. They're another team, interestingly kind of building things, from the ground up in terms of youth football and stuff like that. One thing, I think about the Thorn is there's Thorn and there's Johnson Borough in that small kind of catchment area for players and for teams and stuff like that, for supporters, and kind of like the Bonus kind of United Athletic sort of situation. How far can Thorn go really in terms of growing a fan base and stuff like that? I'm not too sure, but yeah, certainly hotting up in the second division. On the third division, Chris, we have Knightswood at the top of the table at the moment on 63 points. Craigmark on 63 points also. Knightswood on a far superior goal difference. Port Glasgow on 62, and then a big gap down to Glasgow Uni on 49. Knightswood, Craigmark, Port Glasgow, Glasgow Uni, Yokert and Dalry have confirmed promotion. Ardeer, Finnart and Easterhouse are in the spots as it stands. Ardeer on 43, Finnart on 40 and Easterhouse on 39. Just below them is Girvan on 35, but they've only got one game left to play. And Glasgow United and Glenville are on 34. Glenville only got one game to play, and Glasgow United are on 3 games left to play. So you're probably looking at it and going, it's only really Glasgow United that can mount the challenge really on that one. Otherwise, it'll be Ardeer, Finnart and Easterhouse that will get the spot. So I'm just looking at it. Yeah, Glasgow United can only catch Ardeer on goal difference. So Ardeer are pretty much set. And delighted for the guys at Ardeer. I think I've kind of had a few conversations with them recently. I went to one of the matches and certainly watched Campbell McLean, first midfielder, play for Ardeer on loan recently. And yeah, I like what Ardeer are doing. I think they're a team that have been had their troubles and they're building themselves back up. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But that one's for me pretty much done, Chris.
Talking about Thorn Athletic there, I actually think a lot of the same of what you said could be applied to Knightswood. Team I'll have a lot of respect for, actually. That I've seen them kind of build up similar to Thorn in terms of what they're doing with the community. See them, I think we follow them on Twitter, obviously, but I think most teams we follow on Twitter, I guess, with the lists. But no, I like what they're doing there. What you said about Ardeer, obviously, totally true. I guess to be honest, it's really just who's going to win the title in the third division. I mean, Craigmark we know they're a good side, a good solid side as well. So it's going to be a tough one. Port Glasgow, it's probably a wee bit out of it. I think they've played one more game if I remember correctly. So yeah,
yeah, they've only got one game to play, and they have to win it. The other teams have to lose. Craig Mark have got 4 games in hand, so you're looking at Craig Mark going, they've got they've got a slight advantage. Whether or not they can do it or not, it's a different story. But certainly, yeah, I think it's between, they say, probably Knightswood and Craig Mark. Port Glasgow, they'll be happy to get promoted. They obviously get promoted last season, so they're building themselves up. They've got good players. You've got a squad. They've got a decent catchment area, I think, for decent players in that kind of Greenock, Port Glasgow, Gourock kind of Inverclyde sort of region. Effie Ambrose is playing for Port Glasgow Juniors. Did you know that?
Aye, I knew that, mate. I saw I'm sure when he signed, I saw the tweet. Obviously, I have to keep up with the transfers and whatnot, but
yeah.
I did remember he signed there. But I mean, I don't know if you could put that under random these days. I mean, there is a lot of former sort of SPFL guys going down to lower levels, if you will.
I don't know what the deal is. I have no clue why he's playing there or what the reason is behind it, but no, fair play. I mean, I was at Glasgow United for a spell earlier in the year, but he moved to Port Glasgow. But no, yeah, it's just an interesting character to see. I went to watch Port Glasgow Aberdeen a few weeks ago, and he was playing in centre half, and it was just like a random. He's playing the Champions League. He's playing at Ardea Stadium. It was just like a random thing to see in football. Finally, then, Chris, on the 4th division is East Kilbride Young Miners on 59, and they are 6 points clear of Royal Albert. West Park on 52, East Kilbride Thistle on 50, Carluke on 49, and Vale of Leven 47, and then it's down to Eglinton on 43 points. All those teams have got confirmed promotion. It's now between Irvine Vicks, Giffnock, and St Peters and Newmains. Still within a chance, probably mathematically, but it's probably just outside their reach now. But East Kilbride Young Miners, I think they've been a good addition to the 4th division this season, I would say, Chris. I think I like their setup. I like what they've got going on. And they've obviously come in and done really well in the division so far. Got promoted. Still got a great chance of winning the league. I know there's some dramas about points taken off people and such like, but in that division, but because of BSC Glasgow. But a good addition, and I've got to say congratulations to Eglinton, team from Kilwinning, who confirmed promotion. Again, our team who have got a lot of young players that come out the Kilwinning Rangers pathway, and like to see them do well. Sam, Duncan, Lewis McGinn, Mikey Moynihan, Stuart McAlpine, all those lads who have been in the setup at Kilwinning and previously, and now playing their trade in a team in Kilwinning and alongside some other kind of more established good players. Like the goalie Ross Lundy's a really good player, and I think he could be playing at a higher level personally myself. And yeah, no, fair play to Eglinton. Going about their business to try and I guess probably not compete with Kilwinning Rangers certainly, but build another option for young players in Kilwinning, which is a good thing I think for me in terms of if they're not going to make it Kilwinning Rangers, then there's another option to go and play elsewhere. So no, good on them. But I wonder, it'll be interesting to see who gets the final spots in the division.
I don't actually know what's going to happen with the 4th division too much. I think it's just going to reduce in numbers with the 5 teams coming in and
I think so, but I think there'll be potentially more teams, join.
All right.
I don't think it's completely finished in terms of that's the final numbers as yet. So I think they'll probably rebalance it a little bit and have a smaller division potentially if they don't get up to that, not 80. They need to, or the membership number, maximum is. So no, it'll be interesting to see. Again, I'm looking forward to seeing the new teams come in as well. And so hopefully, I just hope they add to the equation. That's what I think is really important at the moment if you're doing that. So yeah,
and I think EKYM have obviously I've got, I wouldn't say I've got a wee soft spot, but I know a couple of boys there. Obviously Barry Russell that was in the league with East Kilbride. I actually think they've got a really decent facility as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I mean, some of the teams coming in, I think we talked about them maybe the first episode or the second episode, but certainly at least I've not reviewed all 5, if you will, but certainly there's a couple that look like they will be on that sort of standard that the EK.
There's a fixed episode right there.
But there's a funny thing, Ben, though. I don't actually hear them get called young miners that much. We just EKYM,
no, probably not. Aye, probably not. It's probably an old school thing, but certainly from what I've seen, Maybe they've rebranded to YM. I don't mind it. As I say, I like what they're doing. So, no, fair play to all of them. I sometimes you ever catch one of the players' mums. Is it Linda? She does the social media on TikTok. A boy plays for UKYM, and she always does some TikTok videos. I always like to catch them. They pop up in my TikTok feed now and again. So I always shout out to Linda. She's in the Wassville group chat. So she does I can't remember a boy's name off the top of my head, but I always catch the wee clips of UKYM games on TikTok. So yeah, fair play. Well, that kind of wraps it up pretty much for us on the official Catchup podcast for another week. We will be back, I'm sure, next Sunday to see what's happening across the divisions and see who locks in some of those promotion places across the divisions in the East and the West. If you have any more exciting stuff coming out of the Lone League or such like, then I'm sure we'll have it. It's certainly plenty to talk about. I'm sure we'll cover the likes of Clydebank in a bit more detail. I know the Clydebank fans are buzzing with all their new signings that they've had recently, so we'll speak about that in next week's episode, I think, in a lot more detail. But until then, like, subscribe, follow, do all the good stuff on social media, and we'll be back soon.